Standing at the window of the hotel room, I stare out at the sunset, thinking back to how this all started and how I ended up here. Sipping my soda, I feel the fizz as I swallow, just as my memories do of the last several weeks. Still, I have hope that all is not lost. You see, 6 weeks ago, I discovered my wife of the last 12 years was having an affair. The way I found out was by accident, but isn't that the way most clueless husbands find out? By the way, my name is Dave. My wife Jamie and I met our junior year in college and dated up until we graduated. I went into the Marine Corps, and she went in search of a job. I knew then I loved her but didn't want her to marry me while I was going to be stationed to nowhere. I felt it would be unfair to her. So 5 years later, after finishing my stint, I came home, and within a few weeks landed a good job with a very large company in their sales group. It seems my boss was also a Marine, and he likes to hire former military types as we tend to be more disciplined in our work ethic. I did well in my job and start to make a name for myself. During this time, I decided to begin dating again, so I checked out some online sites. To my very pleasant surprise, I found my college sweetheart Jamie on one of them. God, she does look good in those pictures. Now, Jamie doesn't have supermodel looks, but she does have a killer body. During college, she took modern dance and was very much into staying in shape. And what a shape she has. She stands 5'8" with her legs of a dancer, not overly muscular but curvy. She has long, flowing, rich brown hair that frames her face with those dark brown eyes and a smile that warms my heart every time I see it. She has that girl next door look, you know, sweet and innocent, with just enough confidence thrown in for good measure. I signed up as fast as I could and contacted her immediately. It wasn't until a week later she responded asking where the heck had I been and why I hadn't called or at least emailed her over the last 5 years. If she was this angry at me for not contacting her while I was in the Marines, then she must have missed me. This was a very good sign. Soon we were dating and pretty much picked up where we had left off in college. Within a year we were married, and a year later we had our first child, Rebecca. My job was going great, although I was having to travel more, but that was expected. 2 years later we had our second daughter, Amy. Since then I'd been promoted, and we now have a very nice house in a good neighborhood with good schools. I still travel quite a bit, sometimes 2 weeks each month, but it's what required for my job. It wasn't until a few years later that Jamie started to ask when I wouldn't have to travel so much. She missed having me around and felt safer while I was home. I told her it was a necessary part of my job, that it won't be too much longer before I would be promoted to the next level, and then I'd hardly be traveling at all, and would be home more often. She accepted this but was not thrilled to see me go off on my next trip. I should have seen at that time there was trouble brewing, but I loved and trusted my wife completely, so I was blind to the first hints of a problem. The first clue was us fighting about trivial things when I got back home. She would start by pointing out something that I had nothing to do with, and then somehow blame me for it. If you were home more, this wouldn't happen. Or, we need you here and not gallivanting all over the country. She did have a point, it just took me a while to realize it. The second clue was when I found some of her new clothes in the clothes hamper. I was looking for a shirt and came across some fancy garment and a matching top. My wife has simple tastes and usually just wears a t-shirt and shorts to bed. Sweatpants if it's colder. The only time I did buy her something nice from the store, she wore it only once and never again. But those I found I'd never seen her wear and thought she bought them for herself. The last clue was a shock, and when first told I couldn't believe it. A mutual friend of ours saw Jamie with someone while he was at a farmer's market in a town 40 miles away from where we live. He thought it was me because the two of them were holding hands and he had seen how playful they were with each other, laughing, touching, and hugging. When he got closer to say hello, he saw it wasn't me she was with. He turned quickly away before she could see him and walked away. He knew something wasn't right, so he followed them for a while until they got in his car and drove off. I still remember that call. My phone rang as I was just leaving a meeting. Hello? Dave? It's Frank. Hey Frank, is this important? I'm in between meetings and really can't talk right now. Can I call you later? Yeah, that sounds good. Call me the first chance you get. Okay, he said with some concern in his voice. I'll do that. Are you sure this isn't important? No, it's fine, just call me when you can. This can wait. I hung up and went to my next meeting, not thinking too much about the call, as I didn't know anything and Frank would have told me if it were something I needed to be aware of right away. It wasn't until early that evening that I was able to call Frank back. So Frank, what's up? What is so important that you felt the need to call me while I'm away? I don't know how to tell you this, but it's something you need to know. I saw your wife out the other day and, well, she wasn't alone. He paused, waiting for me to say something. What do you mean? Was she with a friend of hers? I don't know what you're trying to tell me. Now I was getting nervous. When I saw the two of them together, I thought it was you she was with until I got closer and saw that it wasn't you. She was with another person and they seemed, well, like a couple. They were holding hands, laughing, and hugging. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, Dave, but I think she's having an affair. Those words hit me so hard I was numb. What makes you think that? I mean, we're happily married. She has no reason to. I couldn't finish that thought. Then the clues that I'd come across earlier started to make sense, yet I still didn't want to believe it. Frank brought me back. Listen, Dave, I know this is hard to hear, but I felt you needed to know about it as soon as possible. Maybe there is still hope to save your marriage. Look, just tell me if you need anything, okay? Yeah, sure. I'll let you know. Thanks, Frank. I hung up and sat on the bed trying to think if this was real or some kind of sick joke. The more I thought about it, the more I came to the realization that this could be likely. She had seemed distant the last few times I was home. As I considered the possibility of my wife cheating on me, the angrier I became. God, I wanted to confront the person that was getting close to my wife. On the flight home, I started to cool down and started to think more clearly as to what I needed to do. I still didn't have any hard evidence that she was having an affair, and I had no idea of where to start. The first thing I did when the plane landed was to call Frank. He told me he had seen them together and I wanted to know more about the person she was with. The most important thing for me was that my daughters not find out that their parents were having problems. I wanted to save our marriage if it could be and keep our family together. Look, Dave, don't do anything you'll regret. I have a friend of mine who went through the same thing. Maybe you should talk to him to help you find the right way to handle this situation. I'd hate to see you get into any trouble or make things worse. What Frank said made sense. I needed to take a step back and talk to someone who had been through the same thing and could provide some insight on how to prove or disprove that my wife is cheating. The best thing you could do right now is go home and act like nothing is wrong. If she suspects that you know something, it will make it harder to get any evidence against her. I hope I'm wrong, but I know what I saw that day. Frank was right. By the time I got home, I was able to compose myself enough so I could act normally around Jamie and the girls. It wasn't easy, but somehow I pulled it off. Over the next few days, I started to look around the house for clues or telltale signs of her affair. Nothing jumped out at me, but I had this feeling there was something I was missing. Frank called to see if I wanted to talk to his friend, so I agreed to meet them after work at a diner across town the next day. I didn't want Jamie to know what I was up to, so I told her I had some late meetings this week. Entering this busy diner, I found Frank and his friend sitting in a corner booth, each enjoying a milkshake. Frank looked up from his drink. Hey, Dave. This is Mark, the friend I was telling you about. We said hello to each other as I sat down across from Frank. Neither one looked happy to be there. Mark spoke. Frank filled me in on your situation. I know how you feel right now, but don't do anything stupid like I did. He looked hard at me. My wife cheated on me with her boss, and at first I tried to win her back, but she didn't want anything more to do with me. So I took what revenge I could short of hurting her and her jerk boss. I ended up getting into a lot of trouble with the law and losing everything in the divorce to my wife and the lawsuit to her boss. So let me be clear, don't do anything stupid. I just nodded my head. If you could have done things differently, what would you have done? I mean, would you have still tried to win your wife back? Would you have divorced her from the start? I would have confronted her boss, but in a more subtle way so he wouldn't have seen it coming until it was too late. I could hear the anger and frustration in his voice. As for my wife, knowing what I know now, I would have divorced her. Then we began to talk about what I should and shouldn't do. First thing was to get as much evidence of my wife's infidelity, so if and when I confronted her, she could not deny it. Second was to talk to a divorce lawyer and see what assets I could protect and what rights I had in this situation. Third was to have a decent amount of money on hand in case she found out about what I was doing and tries to restrict access to our accounts and credit cards. Fourth was to find a small apartment or make other living arrangements, so if I did decide to leave, I'd have a place to stay. Those were all good ideas and suggestions, but I thought I could just talk to my wife and get her to stop. As soon as I started to say that, Mark banged his fist on the table. What part of don't do anything stupid didn't you understand? I'm sure her new boyfriend is filling her head with how much he cares about her and that her husband is probably out on his trips messing around with some young cocktail waitress or stripper he picked up at some seedy bar. Look before You do or say anything to your wife, you need to know what she has been doing and what she has been told by this jerk. Did you serve in the military at all? This question surprised me. Yeah, I was a Marine. But what does that have to do with this? What's the one thing you want before going into battle? I thought for a moment, good information about your enemy. Exactly. So you need some good information on what has been going on. You need to look at this as a battle and have a plan of attack, of what you should do if something goes wrong. A plan to deal with the aftermath. You cannot move forward if you don't know which direction forward is. I sighed. I just never imagined my wife would do this to me. We seemed so happy and I couldn't say it. It happens even in the best of marriages. I'm really sorry, Mark said quietly. We sat not talking for several minutes until Frank spoke up. So what do you want to do? How do you want to handle this? I knew what had to be done. Well, I want to keep my marriage together if that is still possible, but what I want more than anything is to make that jerk suffer big time for trying to steal my wife. Something that won't involve getting in trouble for me. Mark smiled at that last comment. But first I need proof and information on my enemy. Any thoughts or suggestions? You should be able to get what you need on your own if you have the time and look carefully. Do not waste your money on a private investigator. I spent more money on them and got very little in return. You have access to her bank, credit card accounts, and phone records. First thing I would look for is if she has made any purchase or calls out of the ordinary. Also see if she has a second cell phone and if you can get any numbers off of it. Next, you might want to set up some hidden video cameras around the house that can also record audio. Nothing like catching them together if they're doing it in your bed. I didn't like to think she had used our own bed with this jerk. Mark saw my face. Sorry, man, I didn't mean to. I raised my hand. It's okay. I need to hear this if I'm going to make him pay. We talked for another hour, and I had taken some mental notes. One thing Mark had said was not to talk to anyone at work until I knew who she was seeing. It could be someone that knows my schedule, and if I tipped my hand too soon, the game would be up. Also, he had said he would have been more subtle in going after his wife's lover, and that started me thinking of a way to really get back at this guy. But I needed more information and help. The following day at work, I looked over my travel plans for the next month. I had 2 trips planned and saw one was only a couple of days. If someone here at work knew my schedule, then I needed to be discreet about any changes I made to them. So I talked with my boss and said I may stay out at that client for the whole week and not just the 2 days. He didn't see any problem with that and even said that it was a good idea. The next thing was to make it look like I was out there but somehow make it back unnoticed. I purchased a prepaid debit card with cash and then used it to buy a return ticket on another airline. Then I got online and bought several spy cameras and a regular camera with a powerful zoom and good low light capability. This was part 1 of my plan, to see who this guy is and find out as much as I can about him. The second part was to catch them together on video so there can be no question of her cheating. My day was spent plotting and planning, which I'm very good at, but I still lacked the most important piece of information I needed most. Who was this man? Until that was answered, I couldn't trust anyone, even my best friend and boss Hal. I knew it would take some time to find out the name of this guy, but I would get it. By the end of the week, all the items I had ordered had been delivered to Frank's home. Now I just needed the opportunity to place the spy cameras around my house. Jamie likes to go shopping on Saturday with our girls and her mother, so that left the house all to myself. After several hours, I had all the cameras in place and had tested them out. I could even access them from my tablet or laptop over the internet and see in real time what was happening. With the cameras in place, I went and searched the house for clues. First checking the credit card bills for any strange charges. Then going through her closets to see if she had purchased any new clothes that were more revealing or trendy. There were a few newer items and one that was a very short red dress that I had never seen her in. I would love to, but only for me and not anyone else. My search didn't turn up anything concrete, but that red dress was a departure for her from what she normally wears. I was driving myself crazy and needed some time to think, so I put on my running shorts and shoes and went for a 5-mile jog. A long run always calmed my mind and I was able to think more clearly. On my return, I saw Jamie's car in the driveway and knew my angels were home. As I walked in, I heard their voices and laughter, which always brings a smile to my face. I called out, "Jamie, I'm back." Then I was greeted by my girls as they ran from the family room to tell me how their day was. Jamie came out from the kitchen. "How was your run?" Then hugged me and shooed the girls away. "It was good, but I need a shower." What are we having for dinner? I started to remove my shoes. Pork chops. Hope you're hungry. She turned and walked back to the kitchen to finish cooking dinner. After my shower and dinner, we put our girls to bed and went to the family room to watch some TV. I didn't even notice what was on the screen as I thought about what she was doing while I was away on my trips. Again, I was driving myself crazy, so I said I was going to bed early. Once up in our bedroom, I saw her purse on the hope chest at the end of our bed. Taking a chance, I looked through it for any clues. Soon I found what I was looking for, but a cheap cell phone that I didn't know she had. I turned it on and waited until it powered up. As soon as it was on, I copied down the number, then looked at the call log to see who else called her. There was only one number, so I copied that number down, then shut the phone off. This newfound evidence finally made me accept the fact she was having an affair. I was heartbroken and wanted to make the guy who was sleeping with her suffer. Then Mark's words rang in my head, "Don't do anything stupid." I had to be patient. My revenge on him would come soon enough. I changed quickly and went to bed. When Jamie finally came up, I pretended to be asleep, not wanting to talk to her for fear of letting something slip. The next few days were hard for me, trying to act normal after finding some very damning evidence. Finally, the morning came when I was to leave for yet another business trip. I went through my usual routine. With my bags in the car, I was about to head out, so I'll be back in a week. "Do you have anything special planned?" She looked at me strangely. I'd never asked that question before. No, just the usual. Trying to salvage the situation, my mind raced with possible explanations. "Well, I thought you and the girls might do something fun, that's all." Then, I said a quick goodbye and left. Driving to the airport, I wondered if the cameras I placed in our house would catch her with that guy. I was hoping that she had enough decency to not have him in our own bed. But then I was sure before all this started she would never cheat on me. The next couple of days, I finished up with this particular client in record time and was packed and getting ready to head back home. That night, I was checking the video feeds from the cameras but saw nothing out of the ordinary. So, I decided to review what was recorded earlier. This was a system that would start to record when someone walked in the room that the camera was set up in. It also had a unit that stored all of those recordings from all the cameras, which I could access remotely. I fast-forwarded through that day's recordings, and in one, Jamie was on her secret cell phone. I stopped and reversed the video until I saw her answer the phone and then played it at normal speed. I wanted to hear what she was saying, but the audio was very poor, but I heard enough. "Hey, babe." "No. He'll be gone the rest of the week." "You know we can't do that." "Why not?" "Because one of the neighbors might see you. Look, I'll meet you at the motel." "No, I won't reconsider." She laughed and then turned her back to the camera so I couldn't hear what else was said. Then she turned back. Okay, but be discreet and park down the street at the coffee shop a few blocks away. Park there." "Okay, babe, I can't wait. I'll see you tomorrow night." I couldn't believe what I just heard. That jerk was going to be in my house and in our bed. I was now starting to think of where to dispose of his body. Again, Mark's word came back to me. "Don't do anything stupid." I had to force my anger down and wait until the time was right. But I didn't know how much more of this I could take. God, my own wife, the person I loved the most, the mother of our two amazing children. Why was she doing this? What had I done that drove her into the arms of another person? The flight back home was too quick. I wasn't ready for what awaited me, so I went to a hotel and thought carefully about my next move. I knew tonight was the night they were meeting in my house, and I wanted to see them with my own eyes. Was the person someone I knew, or someone from work? That much I needed to know to help me decide how to proceed. Having no idea of what time they would meet, I did know that he was going to park at the coffee shop down the street, so that is where I waited, even though I had no idea what he looked like. To be safe, I rented a car at the airport and found a spot that gave me a good view of the parking lot. I also brought my camera and did a check to see how good the zoom was. I could be at least 100 yards away and get a good close-up view of his face and license plate. It wasn't until around 9 p.m. that a silver car pulled into the parking lot. I started to take pictures, and thankfully the lighting in the lot was good, so I had a clear view of his face. It was no one I recognized or had seen before. He parked at the other side of the lot away from the coffee shop, then started walking towards my house. I had to take a deep breath to control my anger. While I sat there, I was able to access the Wi-Fi from the coffee shop and view the cameras in my house. Watching for several minutes, Then I saw him enter and give my wife a warm hug. My blood went cold, and it took all the self-control I could muster not to run down the street and confront this man. I sat and tried to listen to what they were saying. "Hey babe, I've been thinking about you all day long." He embraced her again. "I sent the kids over to my parents for the night, and my husband won't be back until Friday, so we have the house to ourselves until tomorrow morning." How considerate that she sent the kids away. I got out of my car and walked quickly down to my house. The front door wasn't locked, as they were too much in a hurry to get upstairs. This just made things easier for me. I went right for his pants and found his wallet with all the information I needed, plus a little extra. With his wallet in hand, I went to my home office, which is on the first floor on the opposite side of the house from our bedroom, so there was little chance I would be heard. Turning on my computer and the printer scanner, I waited for them to power up. Once they were ready, I started to take items from Stephen Bannister's wallet and place them on the scanner, copying his driver's license and some other things as well. When I was done, I was about to put everything back in his wallet and was about to place it back where I found it. Then an idea struck me. I went to the kitchen and got one of those refrigerator magnets that my wife uses to hold notes for items she needs to buy. I took one and then removed Stephen's credit cards, swiping the magnet over the strips on the cards several times in the hopes it would damage them. I had no idea if it would work, but it was worth a shot and gave me a little satisfaction. Soon, with his wallet back where it belonged, I started to take pictures of their clothes spread about the floor. Then I started to record what I was seeing with the video feature of the camera, and very quietly, while recording the whole time, went upstairs. When I got to the top of the stairs, I could hear the faint sounds of their voices. My stomach turned into one big knot as I listened. Looking at our bedroom door, I saw it was wide open. They thought they would have an empty house to themselves, but that wasn't the case. Slowly, I made my way towards the bedroom, hearing their voices getting louder. Then, I was in the doorway, looking at our marital bed. They were so involved in what they were doing that I was able to take a few steps into the bedroom unnoticed. I knew the hidden cameras didn't have the best resolution, so I wanted to have this recorded in high definition. I recorded several minutes of their interaction before I thought I had enough. Plus, I was on the verge of losing control. Again, those wise words cut through my brain, "Don't do anything stupid," so I backed out of the room slowly and left the house. Driving back to the hotel, my mind was a mess and the anger I felt was at an all-time high. I couldn't remember being this mad, and it was starting to scare me. I called Frank, telling him what I had done and all the information that I was able to obtain. "That's great, but you took an awful risk being in the house. Again, I'm sorry about all this. What do you need? I'll give you any help I can." Frank was a good friend. Right now, I just need someone to talk to. I'd also like to talk to Mark again and ask a favor of him. Can you ask him if we could meet this weekend? Sure, no problem. Mark told me he'd like to help you out. After talking with Frank, I tried to get some sleep, but that wasn't going to happen. I got up early, and even though I was dead tired, I went for my usual run to help clear my mind and work off the anger that had been building up. The run did little to ease my mind, so I took a shower and then a long nap to help with the lack of sleep from last night. I returned the rental car to the airport and picked up my own car. I went straight back to the office to check in and talk with Hal. I really needed to see about reducing the amount of traveling I've been doing for work. I walked into Hal's office, closing the door. "Do you have a few minutes for me?" "Yeah, sure. Everything okay, Dave?" My wife has been asking me when I won't be traveling so much. I really need to be home more, so this has to happen soon. I looked at Hal, waiting for an answer. "You're right, and you won't have to wait. Your promotion has been approved, so after your next trip, you'll be working out of the office from now on. There may be 1 or 2 trips a year you'll have to do, but none of this every 2 weeks, every month nonsense. How does that sound?" I just stared like a drooling idiot. "That sounds great." "Thanks, Hal." He noticed something was off. "Dave, is everything okay? You haven't seemed quite right the last few weeks." He looked worried. I decided I needed to tell him, "My wife is having an affair. I saw her with her lover last night and recorded them together." Hal looked at me wide-eyed. "Oh my God. Dave, I don't know what to say. I am so sorry." "What do you need from me? You just gave me the one thing I needed most, and that is not to travel so much. I have to be home to save my marriage. Please don't say anything about this to anyone here in the office." I still don't know who this person is, and if they know someone in the office, that might be feeding them information about my schedule, okay? "Yeah, sure. But do you really think someone from here is doing that? I'm not sure about anything at this point. I'll need you to cover for me if I need to take some time off. I want my wife to think I'm still traveling so I can gather more evidence against her. Can you do that for me? Sure, not a problem, but what are you going to do? I just want to collect enough proof so she can't deny the affair. I'm hoping to save my marriage, but if that fails, I want to make sure she doesn't take me to the cleaners in the divorce. Hal nodded in agreement. All right, just let me know when you need time off, and we'll make it look like you're on another business trip. If there is anything else I can do, just let me know. I thanked Hal and left his office feeling a little better as things were starting to fall into place. I went home that night and tried my best to act normal. My kids greeted me enthusiastically as I walked through the door, and I had to keep from crying, thinking about how they would be affected if a divorce were to happen. I didn't like the idea of having to get permission to visit my own children. I have to save this marriage. I still loved my wife, and I hoped she still loved me, and that we could work out what caused her infidelity. On Saturday, my wife and kids went shopping, and I went to talk to Mark and Frank. This time we met at a diner, and I filled them in on what I had done in gathering my intel. Mark looked at me. That took guts, my friend. I'm surprised you didn't confront that fool, but it's probably for the best that you didn't. So Frank tells me you need my help. What is it that I can do for you? You said you spent some time in prison. I was hoping you might know some people who have certain skills. Both Frank and Mark looked at me with raised eyebrows. For the next hour, I told them of my plan and what I hoped to accomplish with the help of those Mark knew. Once I finished, Mark just smiled. Wow, that is a solid plan. I think I know just the person to help you out. If he can't, I'm sure he'll know of others who can. But these guys will want to be paid, so you'll have to work that out with them. I'll make some calls and reach out to some old friends. Okay, great. Here's my cell number. I wrote it down on a napkin and handed it to him. Call me when you've talked to your friends. We can set up a meeting to work out the details. We talked a while longer and came up with a few more ideas which I was going to implement as soon as I could. I'd have to make some more online purchases and have them ready for the next phase of my plan. The rest of the weekend went the way most weekends go, with one noticeable difference. On Sunday night, my wife and I usually spend time together. This time, she wasn't feeling well. It wasn't the first time this happened, so it was not surprising, but it had been over a month since the last time we were close. My next trip was coming up, and I asked Hal for the following week off, but if anyone called the office, they were to be told I was on a regular business trip. He had no problem with that and wished me luck. So now I had to let my wife know my next trip was going to be longer. She was not happy, but that was to be expected. Honey, I know you don't like it when I travel so much, but I promise it won't be much longer, and soon I won't be traveling nearly as much. I'll be home so often you'll get tired of me after a while, I joked. She didn't smile. She sighed. Just go and call me when you get there, she said, sounding cool. I hugged her. It was like hugging an ice cube. She was cold, and I knew this was not good. It hurt me deeply, even more than seeing her with someone else. Was this the end of our marriage? I hurried out the door before I said something I'd regret and drove to the airport. Again, the meetings with these clients went very well, and a deal was reached early, so I was able to fly back a day sooner. I kept checking the cameras during the week, but he didn't reappear at my house. However, I did see her on that secret cell phone of hers. So I listened to her conversation, and I knew this was the opportunity I was looking for, even though it pained me to hear what she was planning on doing. I went to the office and found the items that I had ordered waiting for me. Knowing my wife's normal routine, I could easily set up one of these items that I got with little chance of being caught. She went to the gym 4 times a week, and I knew when and where, so I had her spare car keys and was able to place the item where she wouldn't find it. Next, I went to Steven's condo to see if he was there. I saw his car parked in the carport, so I assumed he was home. I brought my camera and was checking if I could see him inside. I got very lucky as I saw him through his sliding doors and that he wasn't alone. He was with another woman, and they seemed to be very close. This was too good to be true as I took a video of them. When I saw them leaving together, I followed them from a safe distance. They went for lunch, which gave me a chance to place the other item on his car. This was a little more difficult and risky, but I was able to do it without being caught. Now all I needed to do was wait. That was the hardest thing for me to do. I got a call from Mark telling me he had a friend I should meet. We agreed to meet in my hotel room since I didn't want to be seen in public with these guys, as I was planning on some questionable activities. The less we were seen together, the better. They got to my room, and Mark made some quick introductions. This is Joe, and he is a computer expert who can help with your plan. We all nodded in agreement. For the next hour, I told them the whole story of my wife cheating and the guy she was seeing. Then I told them about the revenge I wanted to get on this person, and I wanted it to last for years. Then I showed them the copies of the contents of Steven's wallet that I had taken. I also told them about trying to wipe the magnetic strips with a refrigerator magnet. That's a clever idea, but you might want to get a stronger magnet to ensure it really messes them up. As for what you are asking for, it's highly illegal, and if I get caught, I'll be in big trouble. What's in it for me? Joe asked. I thought for a moment, how about $5,000 in cash? Joe answered right away, done, but I want to be paid up front. Half up front, and the rest once the job is done. Okay, that'll work. We need to get into his condo so we can access his computer. I also want to see if there is any other evidence I can find against my wife. With the information I had on Steven, Joe was able to use my laptop to check what purchases he had made in the past week. What caught our attention were the 2 airline tickets to Las Vegas in a hotel room for 5 nights. This was when we would break into his condo, and Joe asked if I knew if he had an alarm system. I told him I didn't know, so he said he would go and check it out and get back to me. If there was an alarm system, he said his pay for getting us in would have to be increased. I agreed to pay him more, but only if there was justification for it. It seemed my wife was planning a little trip, and this was going to be her last with this person. I checked my tablet to see if the tracking devices that I had placed in their cars were working. These were devices that would show me the location of their cars, which I could access either from my tablet or smartphone. I also checked the video cameras at home and saw she had packed a small carry-on bag for the trip. The day came, and I watched their progress from the comfort of my hotel room. I called Joe, and he agreed to meet later that afternoon. He hadn't seen any alarm systems that were visible but reminded me that we had to be careful regardless. We met a few blocks from Steven's condo and went over the plan on how we would get in. One thing Joe had learned in the past was how to pick locks. It was just after sunset, and as it was getting dark, that would help keep prying eyes from seeing what we were up to. Joe had his laptop in a messenger bag and had my camera. At the front door of Steven's condo, Joe immediately knelt down and worked on the locks for almost a minute. Soon, he had the door open, and we quietly entered. We looked around first for any sign of an alarm system. Once we were satisfied that there wasn't one, we looked for Steven's computer. Fortunately, it was sitting out in the open, and Joe went about his work. Wait, I said, as I slowly made a video recording of where everything was in the room. I want to be sure we leave everything as we found it. Joe nodded. Good idea. If he doesn't see anything out of place, he won't know someone was here. The more time we have to mess with this guy, the better. I like it. Okay, let me do my magic. Why don't you look around and see if there is any incriminating evidence? I started to walk around the place and see if there was any sign of what he had been doing. Looking through his mail, I noticed his bank statement, credit card bills, a few other bills, and the usual junk mail. I walked into his bedroom, taking video as I went. The one thing that stuck out was how clean the place was and the nice furniture. It all looked expensive. I still had no clue what this guy did for a living, but it had to pay well. I heard Joe say, "Jackpot." I went back to the other room. I got in no problem and found out he does a lot of bill payments online. I also found his checks and extra credit cards. I was hoping we'd find these. I brought my card reader that will record all the information from the magnetic strip. And then I can make copies of his credit cards so anyone who has one of these copies can use it for online purchases and such. His cards could be maxed out in just a few hours. Joe was grinning. Can you empty out his bank account? Not a problem. I'll do it from this computer so it looks more legit. The bank may call and ask to verify the transaction. Will that require any sort of password for them? Not usually, but they might ask for his social security number, which you have. I had copied it from Steven's wallet. What a fool. Okay, do whatever you need to do, but I want to wait until the last possible moment to wreak havoc on this person. Let's empty his bank account now, and then we'll mess up his credit cards the day he is due back from Las Vegas. I like it. A nice little homecoming gift. Joe was getting into this. Just make sure none of this can come back to us, okay? Man, that's a given. I do not want to go to jail again, and I'm covering my tracks as I go. Why do you think we're wearing these gloves? Joe raised his hand and wiggled his fingers, showing me the blue glove he had on. I went back to search through his bedroom and didn't find much until I looked in the back of his closet. I found a shoebox with several recordable DVR discs. They were labeled with women's names. As I pulled out the box, I dumped it on his bed and started to sort through them. I didn't recognize any of the names until I saw Jamie's. That jerk had recorded the two of them together. But why? "You better come see this," Joe said. I went back to the other room. "What did you find?" "It seems your friend is into blackmail. He has a number of videos of women being with him. You can clearly see the women's faces in the videos, but he has the camera at such an angle that you can't see his. From some of the emails he's received, some of the women are asking for more time to pay him. My guess is he starts relationships with married women who have children, then breaks up with them and then starts to blackmail them with these videos. None of them wants to get a divorce, especially with these videos that could be used against them in court. He is a real sweetheart. Well, payback is a mess. Does he have all these videos on his hard drive? I'm not sure. Well, I found a number of DVRs in his closet, so my guess is those are the only copies he has on disk. When you're done, delete everything on his hard drive so there is nothing on it. Did you find a backup drive? No, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have one. Let me look around and see if I can find it. I went back to the bedroom and gathered up all the DVRs and used a backpack that I found in the closet to carry them in. I looked around the room some more but was unable to find any other evidence, so I went back to see how Joe was doing. You were right. I found his backup drive. Good. Make a full backup, delete everything on the drive on his laptop, and we'll take his backup drive with us. But if we do that, he'll know someone was here. I know, but it can't be helped. With his blackmail scheme ruined, he won't be able to make any more money off of this, and it will bankrupt him. I'd also like to let these women know they don't have to worry about him anymore. Which reminds me, print out all the emails you find from these women. I'll set up an email account and let them know they don't have to pay this jerk anymore. Okay, you're the one paying me. I can set up that email account from his computer if you'd like. Go ahead. After he finished up, I did another once around the place before we locked up and left quickly. Once back at the cars, I handed Joe an envelope with the rest of his money. Thanks for your help. I'll call you when I want you to completely ruin this guy. Okay? We shook hands. It'll be my pleasure. Hope things work out for you and your wife. With that, he drove off. I went back to my hotel and started to put the rest of my plan in motion. First, I called my in-laws to see if they had my children. My father-in-law answered, "Hello? Dad, it's me, Dave. I just wanted to see how the kids are doing. I hope they aren't giving you and Mom too much trouble," I said with some cheer in my voice. "David, no, they're both being well behaved. I hope Jamie is having fun on her girls' weekend. Have you talked to her today?" "No, not yet." That was going to be my next call. I just wanted to make sure the girls weren't causing any problems. I knew they wouldn't. They love staying at their grandparents' house. After talking with Jamie's dad, it was clear he had no idea she was in Las Vegas having a really good time with another guy. What a piece of work she is. My next call was to the house, which I knew she wouldn't be at, so I left a message. Then I waited an hour, and when she didn't call me back, I called her cell. Again, she didn't pick up, so I left a message saying that I was worried. I added that if I didn't hear from her within the hour, I was going to call her parents. 15 minutes later, my cell phone rang and surprise, it was Jamie. "There you are. Is everything okay? I called the house, but you didn't answer." "No, everything's fine. I was out with a few friends, and I took the girls over to my parents. I just wanted to get out of the house for a bit, that's all." She sounded a bit tense. I can understand that. "Well, I'll be home in a week, and maybe we could have our own night out. What do you think?" "Oh, sure. That would be nice." There was uncertainty in her voice. "Jamie, is everything okay? You don't sound too excited about going out with your own husband." I was teasing her a little, trying to make her nervous. "Oh no, I'm just tired. I think I'll go to bed early tonight." She was trying to end the conversation. "Sure, babe, I'll let you go. Sleep well." "I love you." We hung up. My anger was returning, but I made myself calm down. Again, I didn't sleep well, so I was up early doing my morning run. I got back to my hotel room and took a nice long shower. Afterwards, I called the office to check if anything needed my attention, but all seemed to be going smoothly there. Then I got the call every parent fears. Rebecca was injured at school and had to be taken to the hospital. At that moment, nothing mattered to me more than the safety of my child. The school called my house first, and when no one answered, they tried to call me at work. Someone from my office called me, and I called the school back. They informed me that she had broken her arm and was at the emergency room being treated. I rushed out the door and went straight to the hospital. Once there, I called Jamie's cell, and when I got her voicemail, I left a message saying that if she didn't call me within the next 15 minutes, the next call I would make is to a divorce lawyer. It was an hour later that my cell phone rang. I saw it was from Jamie, so I rejected the call and sat with my daughter as the doctor set her arm in a cast. She was crying and saying she wanted mommy. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't know what to say. It took some time, but she finally settled down, and I took her to her grandparents. My phone rang again, and again I rejected it. When I had calmed down, I made a call to a good divorce lawyer and set up an appointment for the following day. Then Jamie called again, and I took this call. Nice of you to make the time to call me. How is Steven? Hope you had some luck at the blackjack tables. Oh, by the time you make it home, the girls and I will have moved out. I've contacted a divorce lawyer, and with all the evidence and the videos I have of you and Steven together, I doubt I'll have any trouble getting full custody of the children. Oh God, please Dave, don't do this. Please. She was crying. You seem to forget you're the one in Las Vegas while your child was in a hospital crying for her mother. But her mother couldn't be bothered because she was having fun with her friend. Well, maybe you can start over with Steven and have the life you always wanted. You just won't have your 2 little girls, though. Hey, you're still young, and I'm sure Steven can give you more children. I truly hope you two will be happy together. But Dave, it's you I love. It's you I want to. I ended the call. I took Rebecca and Amy home and helped them pack their bags with some clothes. I brought them to my hotel and got them their own room next to mine. Then I called Jamie's father and told him what happened at school and that for the time being, we won't be living at home until some things can be resolved. Dave, what is going on? Are you and Jamie fighting? We're having some problems, but you should ask her. For now, the girls will be staying with me until I can be certain of their well-being and safety. I hope you understand. He didn't, but he wished us the best anyway and hoped we could work things out. The next call I made was to Joe. Hey, so what's the good news? Wreak havoc on that jerk. Max out all his credit cards and make sure he has no money in any of his bank accounts. Also, see if you can ruin his credit by opening up more cards and maxing them out as well. I want him under a mountain of debt he won't be able to get out from. Joe laughed. My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Call me if you want anything else done to this guy. It will be free of charge. After that, I called my house, and Jamie answered immediately. Hello? It's me. Oh God, Dave, I am so sorry. Please, can we at least talk about this? I want to try and save our marriage. She was crying again. If you really mean that, then I have some conditions that need to be met, I said coolly. All right, I'll do whatever you ask. Just please don't leave me. She said, crying. I want to see my girls. I need them as much as I need you. I hope you mean that, Jamie. This is the only time I'll forgive your betrayal. If this ever happens again, we will be through. Do you understand? Yes, I understand, she said quietly. First, I need you to call Steven and tell him it's over between the two of you and that I know the whole story. Second, you and I will sit down and you will watch all the videos I took of you two together so you know without any doubt what I saw. Third, but we will be seeing a marriage counselor until they are satisfied we have mended our marriage. I do love you, but your betrayal hurt me so much. When Rebecca was injured and she was crying for you, I didn't know what to tell her. You have no idea the pain I went through. I paused for a moment and heard her crying. Dave, I am so sorry for what I did. I was so lonely and you weren't around much of the time. I know that's a poor excuse, but it's the truth. I'll do all that you ask, but please bring the girls home. I miss them and you so much. Not just yet. You need to see what it will be like if you do this again. I want you to be alone with your thoughts and your pain like I was for the last several weeks. I'll call you in the next few days and let you know when we'll be home. Think about how this will affect our girls. Think how they will grow up resenting their own mother because she wanted a more exciting life and was willing to give up her own family to get it. Think about that, Jamie. I ended the call and sighed. I only hoped she took what I said to heart. It was 3 days later when I called home to let Jamie know that I'd be bringing the girls home the following morning. She was crying and kept saying we would work things out. I hope so, Jamie. I really hope so. The following morning, the girls and I drove home. As soon as we pulled into the driveway, Jamie was running out the front door to greet us. The girls hopped out of the car and into their mother's arms. She hugged them, telling them how much she loved them. Jamie looked up at me and mouthed thank you, then continued hugging her daughters. Once everyone was inside and I had unloaded the car, Rebecca was telling her mother what happened at school and how she broke her arm falling off the swing. "Baby, I am so sorry Mommy wasn't there for you. I promise that will never happen again." "Okay, sweetie, sure, Mom, but it's okay. Daddy was there, and he even took us on a vacation." This made Jamie cry again, realizing that I was the one who came to her when she was hurt while her mother was away in Las Vegas with another person. It was too much for Jamie, and she ran to the bedroom, shutting the door. "Is Mommy all right?" She was crying. Rebecca asked. "She's okay, sweetie. She was just upset she wasn't there at the hospital when you were hurt. I'll go talk to her in a little while. She just needs some time." Yeah, some time with her guilt. I brought the girls' bags upstairs and they began to unpack. They seemed fine, so I went to our bedroom and slowly opened the door to find my wife lying face down on the bed crying. I sat down on the edge and rubbed her back. She looked up at me. "David, I can never say I'm sorry enough to you or the girls. I feel so horrible. How can I make this up to you? How can I make this right again?" I looked into her eyes. "Do you love me?" "Oh gosh, yes, with all my heart. I love you so much." "I love you too. But you have to know how hurt I was when I found out about your secret relationship. Things won't be the same between us for some time. I just don't know if I can trust you again. I want to, but the pain you caused was almost too much for me. I wanted to confront that jerk. I still do, but I won't. I just need to know in my heart you won't do anything like this again, and that will take some time. I understand, and I'm willing to do anything to keep our family together. Please give me a chance." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I love you so much, Jamie." I leaned down and hugged her. "We're going to make it through this. We both need to work at it, and I hope we can get back to where we were before all of this started." That night, we had dinner as a whole family for the first time in weeks. The girls were happy to have me home again, and I told them I'd be home a lot more. Then I told Jamie about my promotion and that I wouldn't be traveling as much. Maybe a few times a year, but no more 2 weeks every month nonsense. This made her very happy, and she started to cry, but this time they were tears of joy. Later, once the girls were in bed, Jamie and I sat in the family room and talked. "I need to know a few things, like why this happened. I know I wasn't around as much as I should have been, but why did you feel the need to be with someone else?" She looked down at her hands. "Well, I don't know why, really. It just sort of happened. I mean, it's not much of an excuse, but it is the truth. You see, when I met Steven, he was all sweet and friendly, and we talked a lot. Then I started to tell him about how much you traveled and how much I missed you. He said that if you really loved me, you would be home more. He said he would never have left such a wonderful and beautiful woman like me alone. I guess all the compliments got to me. Before I knew it, we were having lunch together, then meeting for coffee in the mornings, and then I found myself at his home. I'm so ashamed and embarrassed by all of this." I paused and reached for her hand. "I know this is hard, but if we're going to get past this, I need to know. How did the two of you meet?" She squeezed my hand. "At the health club. One of the women there, Kathy, introduced us, and I stopped her. "Kathy? She knows this guy?" Yes. She said they were good friends, so I thought he was a nice guy, but now, wait 1 minute. I got up and found the backpack I took from that jerk's home along with the DVRs. I looked through them and found one with Kathy written on it. I put it in the DVD player and turned on the TV. The screen came to life, showing a very attractive middle-aged blonde woman. "Is this Kathy?" Jamie was shocked and saw that it was Kathy. "How did you get this video? Where did you get it?" "From your friend's home, Steven. He has been causing trouble for the women he's been involved with. It may be part of the deal that he gets these women to introduce him to his next victim. That was you. Oh gosh, he could have ruined our marriage. It was just supposed to be a short-term fling. I was so stupid." She put her head into her hands. "It's okay, he can't ruin our marriage now, but it does need to be fixed. I'd like you to talk to Kathy for me. I've been contacting all these women to let them know he doesn't have anything on them, that I've taken all of his compromising material, and that he has nothing over them anymore." That night, we talked some more but decided we needed professional help. The next day I went to work and told Jamie that we would find a marriage counselor together and start going as soon as possible. Meanwhile, we would talk and be open about what each other thought or felt that needed to be fixed in our marriage. Once at work, I began to settle into my new position and tried to put the last few weeks behind me. Later that day, Jamie called. "Hey honey, everything all right?" "No, it isn't." Steven called and he was upset. He said he has a video of me being with him and that if I didn't start paying him, he'd upload it to the internet. "Dave, I don't know what to do. Are you sure you got that video?" "Don't worry, Jamie. I'm sure I have the only copy." "How much money did he ask for?" "He said I needed to pay $5,000 in cash by tomorrow, or he will upload the video if I don't show up with the money." "What are we going to do?" I heard the fear in her voice. "You let me handle it and don't worry. I'll make sure he doesn't go through with his threat." "Look, I'll be home soon and we can talk about it, but in the meantime, if he calls again, let me know, okay?" She paused. "Okay, honey, please come home soon." After that call, I immediately looked up a home security company and called to make an appointment for them to come to our house and have a security system installed. I was now worried this person might come after my family, so I didn't want to take any chances. My next call was to Joe to see if he did as I had asked. You better believe it. He almost has as much debt as the US government. He'll be buried with this for a long, long time to come. Even if he can prove he didn't incur it, it will take years, if not decades, to repair his credit. Keep up the pressure. I want you to hurt him financially so he goes bankrupt. Think you can do that? Already on it. Soon he'll be collecting cans on the side of the highway to get the nickel deposit so he can buy enough food to feed himself. Joe chuckled. I smiled at the image of that. Perfect. Thanks, Joe. My next call was to my divorce lawyer. I needed the name of a good private investigator to see if I could turn the tables on Steven. Once I got the number, I called and talked with a guy named Henry. I explained the situation and asked if he could help. Well, it's not the normal case I get involved in, but I have some ideas. He told me what he had in mind, and I agreed. I asked him to meet me at my house so we could talk it over with my wife and see if she would agree to the plan. His plan was very simple. My wife would wear a wire and record the conversation with Steven when she gives him the money. The P.I. will be recording their meeting on video, and I'll be nearby in case anything goes wrong. With some luck, Steven will incriminate himself, and at that point, we'd use it either to blackmail him to leave us alone or to turn all the evidence over to the police. I wasn't sure of the legality of what we were doing, but I was sure this would keep him from troubling us again. When I arrived home, Jamie rushed into my arms and gave me a big hug. She was visibly upset and needed me there to comfort her. I told her I talked with a P.I. and what he had planned for Steven. I don't know if I can do it. I don't want to see that jerk ever again. Is there any other way we could do this? She really didn't want to do this. Jamie, if we're going to get this guy out of our lives, we need to turn the tables on him. Look, I'll be nearby and Henry will video record the whole exchange. If things go well, he will never bother you or us again, okay? She nodded. If this is what it takes, then I'll do it. Just promise me you'll be there close by. I promise. Then the doorbell rang and Henry was waiting as I opened the door. Soon, we were talking about the finer points of the plan and what Jamie needed to do and say to get Steven to incriminate himself and what will happen once he takes the money. I made the suggestion that we give him an envelope filled with 23 $1 bills sandwiched between two $100 bills. As long as he doesn't look too closely, he'll hopefully take the money and run. Henry said that probably wouldn't work, and we should just give him the money. If things went according to plan, he wasn't going to get to keep the money anyway. The most important thing was to do this exchange in a very public place. That would make it less likely Steven would get violent or do anything stupid. The following morning, I called into work, saying I'd be out. Then Henry came by and wired up my wife with a small wireless microphone to record the conversation between her and Steven. We went over what Jamie had to do and say to get Steven to confess his crimes and what she needed to do immediately after the meeting was over. I was going to be nearby watching the whole thing take place. Henry didn't like the idea of me being there for fear that Steven might see me and scare him off. I promised to stay out of sight, but I wasn't going to be too far from my wife if things got ugly. Soon Steven called to make the arrangements for the exchange. Jamie did just as she was instructed and said she would only do it at a public place. Henry told her to make it at an outdoor coffee shop where he could video record all that went on without being seen. I was planning on being in a shop a few doors down and watch from a safe distance. Steven seemed anxious when he called and readily agreed to it. We got to the area where the coffee shop was an hour before the exchange, and Henry got set up while I went to a sandwich shop just a few doors down, then ordered a sandwich and a drink so I wouldn't look too suspicious. Just over half an hour later, Jamie showed up at the coffee shop. She ordered some coffee, then took a seat as close to the sidewalk as possible so she would be in view for Henry to record and I could see her as well. I saw Stephen arrive within 15 minutes after Jamie sat down with her coffee. He must have been there early too, and I just hoped he hadn't seen me or Henry. Stephen sat down at the table across from Jamie. She looked nervous but seemed to be okay for the moment. Stephen just looked at her and was saying something, but since I was in the shop a few doors down, I couldn't hear a thing. I just kept my eyes on Jamie, and if there was a hint of trouble, I'd be out the door and on Stephen in a heartbeat. They talked for a few minutes, and I saw Jamie slide the envelope with the money across the table to him. Then she looked at him in anger and said something. Suddenly, Stephen grabbed her by the wrist, and she threw her coffee in his face. That's all I needed, and I was out the door, ready to teach him a lesson. As I cleared the doorway, I heard Jamie screaming, "You disgusting jerk." It was strange to hear Jamie talk like that. She usually kept her cool and rarely raised her voice in anger. With just a few long strides, I was by their table and grabbing Stephen's arm. "Hey, what the—" He never finished that sentence. I twisted his arm, then with my free hand, I hit him square on the jaw. This sent him backwards, sprawling out on the sidewalk. He looked up at me in shock and fear as I leaned down over his face and said in a low growl, "If you ever come near my wife again, I promise I will hurt you in ways you can't even begin to imagine." Then I scooped up the envelope and looked over at my wife. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" No, I'm fine. He was just being mean and wanted more money. I told him this was a one-time payment, but then he said he had more recordings." She looked upset. "I don't think this jerk has anything. Let's go home." And with that, I took my wife's hand and we left Stephen lying on the sidewalk as he watched us walk away. The following day, Henry, my wife, and I went straight to the police station and talked with a detective and showed him what we recorded. He said there appeared to be enough evidence to charge Stephen. Soon an investigation was started, but Stephen was nowhere to be found as it was determined that he had left town and they would continue to follow up on any leads they came across. It's been a year since the whole ugly affair took place. Jamie and I have been seeing a marriage counselor, and we've never been happier. We still have some issues to deal with, but our marriage is stronger and our love is deeper now than when all this began. We do talk about it from time to time at the suggestion of our counselor, but we don't dwell on it. Stephen hasn't been seen since our encounter that day, and as far as I'm concerned, he can go to heck. As far as Jamie and my traveling go, I now take her on my trips when I can and when it works out for her and the kids. We've had some interesting trips together, but that's another story.